Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honorable members, I rise to make my contribution to the debate on the appropriation bill for 2023. I must, however, express gratitude to my leader, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, for giving me a voice in this Parliament on behalf of the people of North Windward. I want to also thank the other executive members of the NDP and the NDP family as a whole for this opportunity. And it's a position I take very seriously as it is given to me. I want to thank Almighty God for His grace and mercies extended towards me for the past years. And Madam Speaker, He said in His word, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest upon me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties." And that is from 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verses 9. Madam Speaker, God is good, and His faithfulness endures forever. I will also like to thank my family, my husband, my son, my daughter, for their support over the years and for bearing with me, for being away from home sometimes, being on the road, and hearing more of people than sometimes when I listen to them. You know, it's a big sacrifice, but it's something I delight in. Madam Speaker, in this honorable House and in taking up the profession and the position of a parliamentarian and a leader, I reiterate what my honorable colleague said: we must be servant leaders. And we must display servant leadership. And we must display that over our own self-interest. Madam Speaker, when we talk about servant leadership, what exactly are we talking about? Well, this word was coined by Robert K. Greenleaf, and it refers to a leader who shares power, puts the needs of others first, and helps people develop and perform as highly as possible. Madam Speaker, when we contrast this to the traditional leader, and we look at a traditional leader, and that traditional leader normally focuses on the power and the power at the top. Madam Speaker, I say too many of our politicians fall into this category of traditional leaders. They care little about the people who put them there. They display arrogance. Madam Speaker, and sometimes it is displayed right here in this honorable house, you know, and it is something that we should really grow out of. Some of us been here for years, yet still we display that trait. Madam Speaker, we have to remember that our constituents are the ones who should be of utmost importance. And it is imperative that we display empathy and compassion. And we must be able to provide for the less fortunate. Madam Speaker, I pride myself as a servant leader and will work for the development of the people in my constituency and by extension St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Wherever you put me, I shine. Madam Speaker, honorable members, the budget presented to us by the Honorable Minister of Finance on Monday, Marathon 1, was dubbed, or is dubbed, Building Roads from Recovery to Resilience, Reducing Inequality, Protecting the Vulnerable, Driving Sustainable Development. Very long title. And it has in lots of information. Even listening, Madam Speaker, sometimes I got lost. Sometimes, yes, because your attention, your attention just go out and you wonder, and you have to come back. And I empathize with the public, because if we are delivering something, we must be able to always grab their attention, and we must be able to relate to them in every form and fashion and keep their attention for the 5 or 6 hours that we are speaking. So I hope that he takes that into consideration, and that the next time you will be able to grab well, if you explain well, the people will understand and will be able to appreciate it. Madam Speaker, I want to focus my attention this afternoon on the Ministry of National Mobilization, Youth, Gender, etc., a ministry that I'm shadowing, and will also wish during the presentation to share some thoughts and concerns on behalf of the people of North Windward. Madam Speaker, in the $1.45 billion budget presented for the fiscal year 2023, numerous projects are there to be started and completed by the end of the year. Might I remind the listening audience that we are faced with many challenges as a small island developing state. We are faced with rising cost of living, tightening financial conditions in the region, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the lingering COVID-19 pandemic, which weighs heavily on the outlook of the country. And we were also faced with the devastating impact of the volcanic eruptions. Madam Speaker, additionally, the IMF predicted that many countries will face recessions for the year 2023, and the minister quoted it in his presentation. And it was further stated that growth for many countries will drop significantly. Madam Speaker, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is not immune at all from these predictions. And we must remember that we depend heavily on imports for many, if not all, of our goods and services. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I would think that with these issues in mind, we will plan accordingly. But the presentation of the Minister of Finance, from my perspective, did not indicate this at all. Madam Speaker, when we look at the cost of living, the rising cost of living is lowering the purchasing power of Vincentians for basic items. We go into the supermarket and you go in with $100, and basically you're coming out with probably 3 or 4 items. Madam Speaker, if you look carefully at cornflakes, right now that is a luxury item for many at breakfast time. Vincentians are unable to save. Pension plans and investment that were there before seem to be an unattainable idea for many workers. And you talk to them on the street, and this is what you get from them. This is the feeling you get from them. Madam Speaker, many of us, the majority of us, we are no longer living paycheck to paycheck. Because, Madam Speaker, by the 14th of the month, you have no money. And this is the reality that we are facing as Vincentians. Madam Speaker, I see in the estimate, in the budget, that we are having an increase in wages and salaries. But this is not enough to cushion the cost of living that we are facing, the high cost of living that we are facing. From my perspective, Madam Speaker, what would benefit Vincentian would be an increase in the list of items that are zero rated and a decrease in the VAT on the items we need and we use daily. Madam Speaker, already we are paying, and I look at it, we are paying a good amount of our money in taxes. And I see the minister proposing decrease in the tax rate as well. So that may ease us. But Madam Speaker, when we are looking at imported inflation, it's something we cannot move away from. And therefore, when we go into the supermarket and we are faced with the increased prices, we must call for something else to cushion our cost. And Madam Speaker, I am hoping that the government will consider a decrease in VAT. Madam Speaker, I believe that a people-centered, transformative government will ensure that the small man on the street reaps all benefits. All the benefits that are being proposed. But, Madam Speaker, when I look at what is going on in our country, and what is proposed in the budget, we can see that there is need for many areas of development. We can see that the government lacked the foresight needed in some of these areas and intend to prolong the country's state of affairs to dilapidation. Madam Speaker, we hear it right here in this honorable house. All of the speakers before me have been speaking about dilapidated conditions of many infrastructure in their communities and in their constituencies. 21 years in this government, and we're speaking about roads and the dilapidated conditions of roads. And every week we have been seeing work being done. So what is really happening? Is it that the work is not being done properly? Is it that we don't have trained people to do the work? And I'm sure that is not the case. Madam Speaker, when we look at some of the potholes in the roads, very deep, and is in great need of concern, we should not be looking in 2023 to talk about a massive road repair program. Madam Speaker, these things should be continuous. And if we are continually improving, then we don't have to be spending millions of dollars in 1 year to repair roads all over the country. Madam Speaker, just recently, there was a Facebook subscriber outlining the many parts he has to change on his vehicle and showing the state of roads in the Maracua constituency. His plight is one we all know too well. Madam Speaker, it is something that government needs to look into, that we do not leave things to go right down. Madam Speaker, in the school system, there is continuous assessment so that if you identify a student who is in need of help, you can help that student along the way. If, however, you wait until the end of the term and you give one big assessment, the student is at a disadvantage. You are not able to help that child until some time elapses. So, Madam Speaker, when we are doing things, we have to do things that will impact positively the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Madam Speaker, as a vehicle owner, you know that over the years, the cost of maintaining your vehicle was huge. Sometimes you have to choose which pothole, and it's all over the country, which pothole you have to go into. And going down in it, you cry out, oh my Lord. It's a shame. When we are talking about tourism, and we're not talking about tourism today because the issue arises today, tourism has been there ever since. And the tourists coming into our country, seeing the state of our country, may be one of the reasons why we have had such decreases. I am not sure, but it can lead to that. It can lead to that, Madam Speaker. So, if it's not the case, then I believe they may be having a blind eye to this, and I'm sure they would write it in their comments when they leave the shores of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. If you are having boxes there where the tourists would write about their experience in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I am sure that one of that is the comment, Madam Speaker. So we wait this year for relief and we wait for comfort. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, honorable members, as a member of this parliament, I will not only critique for critique's sake, we have a responsibility. We have oversight of government. And I take that responsibility very seriously. So when I come to this honorable house and I speak because I want to see better for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I speak because I want to see better for my constituents. I speak because I want to see better for myself, because I am a citizen of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Nobody can deport me from here. All right? Huh? Well, I don't know. You may not. You may be a Trini. I don't know. Huh? Madam Speaker, honorable members. We look at the issue of domestic violence in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I was very happy to hear the Minister of National Mobilization addressing that issue. Again, Madam Speaker, these issues did not arrive overnight in our country. They have been there, they have been bubbling, and as a steaming pot, Madam Speaker, sometimes the lid just lifts off, and we have to face it. So, Madam Speaker, when we speak about domestic violence, and what I am really concerned with is domestic violence against women and girls. And within that, we have sexual violence to contend with, we have rape, and we have many other things that we have to be concerned with. And as a woman, I am very concerned. Madam Speaker, for 21 years, I am not satisfied that this administration has addressed the issue of domestic violence with great concern. "21 years of this administration, and a lot of our women are still afraid to make reports. They lack the confidence in the police service, and we heard that earlier from the minister responsible, that he has to go and speak to the top cop about that issue. Madam Speaker, these women, these girls find themselves alone. Think about the repercussions on these people, women and girls, the mental effect that this have on them. And especially during this COVID-19 period, when many of them were left with their abusers, basically. It is very hard for them. And, Madam Speaker, the laws of our nation seem to be insufficient to deal with what is happening. I'm supporting what is in the budget here, Madam Speaker, when it comes, and the minister speak about it, when it comes to what we would say in our own local parlance, beefing up the legislation, making sure that they're implemented properly. We need it in our system. We need it so that our people can know that there are laws there protecting them. And I pray that this year, Madam Speaker, will not be one of an empty promise on this. I pray that our women and our girls can feel safe within the society in which they live, within their homes, among the men and women, and women too, that they conversate with daily. So, Madam Speaker, permit me to call on our police officers to be more considerate in handling matters of domestic violence. Too many of our women, and I'm sure, Madam Speaker, if my dear senatorial colleague was here, he would have supported me on the issue that too many of our women complain that, again, when they take matters to the police, they are simply told to go home and make up with their spouses. Too many. So I'm calling on the officers to be more considerate when complaints are coming to them. Madam Speaker, additionally, I'm calling on the officers to improve on the lodging of their complaints, because many complaints are not met. I think I remember hearing the minister saying that, that a number of can't find it. But he was speaking to the effect that there was 150 domestic violence reported cases, and they only dealt with 54 reported cases. You worked with 36. Okay. Thank you. So lodging with the police is what I'm referring to here, Madam Speaker. And I'm hoping that when you meet with the top cop, that their logging, with concerning domestic violence would improve. Because we need to keep accurate registers on all reports. And I'm saying it because, to my knowledge, it is not done. Madam Speaker, when we look at also at the number of cases that are being dealt with, and the minister is now saying that many of the domestic violence abusers did not follow up, but then if they did not follow up, I think we need policies in place where we, within the ministry, can go and ensure that these cases are dealt with in the best possible way, especially for our girls and many of our school-age girls. Policies and legislation should be put in place to ensure that if this be the case, something should be done. All right? That's right. So we want to address that matter, and we hope that this matter is addressed with urgency as we go through 2023. Madam Speaker, The care for the elderly in our society is very critical. Many have made meaningful contributions to this developed nation of ours and have been doing it for a very long time, whether it be in the informal sector or whether it be in the formal sector. And Madam Speaker, better care must be given to them. We heard of the geriatric center being built or renovated in that case. I support that, Madam Speaker. But when we talk about better care, Madam Speaker, I'm looking especially at the health of these people. And there are times when they're not able to move from their homes to access these health care. So, Madam Speaker, we hope that those who are unable to move from their homes should have access to services, and that the government should consider providing those services to them so that they can reach to the various health facilities and access the service with ease, or bring the service to them. Probably they can have door-to-door doctor on call, probably once a month, but there are some who sometimes they don't even have persons living with them. And this is of great concern because, and you spoke of it earlier, when you have elderly people living by themselves, you don't know. So if it is the community nurse, and I must commend the community nurse in some areas who will go about and check on them and even do testing, all right? The home health for the elderly program, but by 4 o'clock they're gone. So by in midnight, they're still in need early morning.
Minutes remaining.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I will. Thank you. Madam Speaker, at that stage in life, we must, again, I reiterate, we must be concerned for them because youth is but one stage of life, and we must prepare for what might come if we are so fortunate or we are so blessed. Madam Speaker, not everyone who wants to pursue further education will benefit from scholarships, and I hear the ministers talking about scholarships and bursaries or grants and the like, and I applaud that, Madam Speaker, because I am for education. I'm from a poor family, and I ensure that when they gave me the opportunity to be educated, I took it with grace. And I encourage children, everyone whom I get in contact with, I encourage them to take their education seriously. Madam Speaker, my past students, they used to say to me, Miss, you love to talk, because I will pound it in their head that they must hold their heads up. And my reply to them was, yes, I'm being paid to talk and I will talk. So, Madam Speaker, we know that not everyone will get that. In fact, Madam Speaker, I remember once that the Honorable Minister of Finance, he said, you know, if you're qualified for a scholarship, you know, knock on the comrade's door and you can talk to him. And we were all assuming that he was referring to the Honorable Prime Minister. But Madam Speaker, this in my mind cements a very biased approach to the distribution when it comes to that, because why knock on the door? If you're entitled, you're entitled, in my mind. And as a proud educator of many people, many students, economically disadvantaged students, that statement just kept replaying in my mind, and it really bothers me. But Madam Speaker, when we look at some of the students over the years who did not receive a scholarship or a bursary or a grant and who wish to pursue further education, we know that they have to approach the financial institutions for funding. And you know, sometimes it can be a very tedious process. Madam Speaker, if you are successful in getting the funding and going off, you return to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and basically you're working for a meager salary. And sometimes that salary that you have to pay your student loan, and you're able to combat the rising cost of living that you're faced with. And because of that, Madam Speaker, your standard of living will fall. And it will fall, sometimes it falls below what we really want to accept, but you have to accept it because you can't do better. Because you're bonded sometimes when you take these fundings. Madam Speaker, with this in mind, what we have seen is a depleting middle class. Our middle class is disappearing. And, Madam Speaker, with meager salary, rising cost of living, coming back with higher education, the question of what will help these people is basically a reduction in the student loan rate. Because, Madam Speaker, most of your funds at the end of the month goes towards paying student loan. And so, Madam Speaker, we are yet to hear about the promised reduction in the student loan rate that was touted during the general elections by this administration. I know the opposition, we said that we are going to reduce student loan to 4.5%. Student loan interest rate to 4.5%. And I think I heard, if I stand corrected, that this administration, where they were campaigning, said that they would reduce it to 6%. So, Madam Speaker, many of the students who have student loan are still waiting on that promise. We must realize, Madam Speaker, that our valuable resources are our people, and we need them to prosper so that our nation can prosper. Madam Speaker, as the young people will equip in this country, the struggle is real. Shop bread and butter is very hard to come by sometimes, Madam Speaker. And a lot of people are finding it increasingly difficult to pay bills, to buy nutritious foods, and we are just struggling. I remember the Honorable Minister of Finance himself a year ago mentioned the inability of Vincentians to provide nutritious foods to their children. I am sure he would support me in saying the situation is still dismal. Madam Speaker, when we look at the allocations presented to the disabled, persons with disability, page 50 of the budget, speak to that, and there was an increase in that allocation. I trust that the spending will be seen in ways that positively affect those persons who are in need. Sadly though, Madam Speaker, other disadvantaged people in our society will be left to suffer for a while longer because funds to these organizations that benefit them have shown no positive change. If we look on page 827 of the estimates, we see that allocations for some remain unchanged for the past 3 consecutive terms of this administration. And I will 827. Right? Society of and for the Blind, 8,000. Golden Years Trust, Marian House, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Madam Speaker, is it that the allocations to these organizations and the ever-increasing operation costs are ignored to these organizations? Why is it that they remain constant? Madam Speaker, we know that we cannot leave these organizations to fail. The National Youth Council is also in it. Well, I don't know if that allocation is for administrative work or if the National Youth Council is in operation, but I'm seeing allocations for it here. And Madam Speaker, what I'm saying is that over the years, these allocations remain the same. Operation costs for these institutions, these organizations have increased. And Madam Speaker, I do hope that consideration is given to these institutions so that they will not fail based on the cost. I know that they have to come up with some of their costs as well, operational costs. But Madam Speaker, as we move and if we want to develop, we have to bring those along with us on our developmental path. Madam Speaker, I turn to community tourism. Very important to development of our people. And some allocations have been made in the budget for community tourism. But I am looking specifically at the training of our people in that area, and I hope that allocations are made for that specifically. Madam Speaker, when a tourist leaves the cruise ship, he or she goes into the community to have that local experience. The product that is offered, therefore, must be attractive, it must be unique, it must be local, and the services of the villagers must be a welcoming one. Madam Speaker, I remember a couple of years ago, a number of tourism community sites were developed. I was part of a group that was also part of the development of the Ovia Salt Pond. And Madam Speaker, we know that well needed. They were well needed, but Madam Speaker, if we look within the communities, we must prepare our people to meet the tourists when they come. Madam Speaker, not only our people, but we also have to look at the beautification of the various villages. And I see here in the budget that there are monies placed aside for beautification of Jackson Bay and Bukument Bay? not, somewhere in the Minister of Tourism constituency there. Yeah, there, I can find it. There is something, Jacksonville and some other. But what beautification, very well needed. And I am hoping that it will go over into the various communities as well, Madam Speaker, because if you're a tourist coming from the cruise ship, going into the villages, you want to have very good mean of sightseeing and what. You don't want to see the drains blocked. You don't want to see, Madam Speaker, these are tourists coming from clean, if they're coming from Singapore or whatever, they're coming from very clean communities, countries, and they want to see the same. We don't want to show them the bad part of us. And on the main road, sometimes you're passing and you see drains blocked there for days. Water smelling. Mosquitoes. Madam Speaker, sight for sore eyes. So what I am saying here, Madam Speaker, beautification should be in every village. Madam Speaker, I remember a couple of years ago, we had the, I think it was the community cleanup best village competition. And Madam Speaker, I remember Overland winning that competition for many years. People had a pride. People had that sense of ownership. I remember we had best school competition. My alma mater, St. Joseph Convent, won it for many years. We in the school had that sense of pride because I remember sister telling us, nothing on the ground. You know, when you come into the school, you smell the cleanness, Madam Speaker. It is not happening in our country again. People don't have that pride again. Nobody wants to pick up a piece of paper on the ground that they meet to throw in the litter, Madam Speaker. If they're going to do it, they want payment. Huh?
Honorable member, you have to wrap it up. Your time is just about expired.
Madam Speaker, I turn to the constituency of North Windward. And a constituency I love dearly. I have worked there all my life. I have lived there all my life. And if the Lord spare my life, I think I would die and be buried there. Madam Speaker, the people of North Windward, they're there to me. I'm not leaving them for anything. I have spoken to them. I laugh with them. And I cried with some of them when it's time for crying, Madam Speaker. So I want to see the best for the people in the constituency of North Windward. And Madam Speaker, I am happy to see work done on the temporary Bailey bridges and allocation for others. Oh, we're Big River, oh, we're Small River Ford, Fancy Ford, page 801 of the estimate. Madam Speaker, it is long overdue. And 22 long, painful years of a ULP government, 22 years of these bridges being ignored, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I came to this honorable house and I made repeated calls for bridges, and I wish to be there when it is completed. I know sometimes, Madam Speaker, you don't get invitation to these things, but I will be there when they are completed because I know I have made representation for the people of North Windward to get these bridges done. Madam Speaker, a new secondary school building in Sandy Bay. Again, I am for education and I am very happy for them. A suitable building is welcome, and we have to ensure that the proper tools, the proper equipment are in place so that our people will not be toting their children to Kingstown because they figure that the school is better. We want the same for all. Madam Speaker, there are many issues, feeder roads, secondary roads. in the constituency, a road alignment for the overland main road there, Madam Speaker. Very, very much in need of getting done. Madam Speaker, the volcanic eruption damaged many churches, and they're also seeking help. So I'm hoping that the Minister of Housing can do that and ensure that houses and churches are also being on that list.
Yes, Honourable Member.
Madam Speaker, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much.
We have to conclude.
Madam Speaker, we are still yet to experience the transformation promised by this ULP government. Our nation seems stagnant. And much have not changed since the NDP vacated office, Madam Speaker. The government constantly referred to the last NDP administration. So it shows us how slow they are working, Madam Speaker. 5 terms and you're still referring back to the NDP administration. Madam Speaker, much is left to be desired. Madam Speaker, when the NDP left office, cell phones were not, they were new or they were not as they are here, Madam Speaker. Only a few business people had cell phones. Most of them had beepers. And I'm sure the young people listening to me now, Madam Speaker, would want to know what is a beeper. The point I'm making, Madam Speaker, is
and
that
this is
the
the last
development
point
of the nation is not keeping with the others, Madam Speaker. I chuckled, you know, while reading the budget, Madam Speaker, and for a national budget to be meaningfully impactful, the citizens of the country, the government must address these issues. Don't hide behind the rhetoric of leaked information from a poverty assessment report. Face the realities of the citizen, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Member, Honourable Member, I
Madam
have
Speaker,
to
may
stop
God
you
bless
there.
us all.
Thank you.
May we face as we face the challenges of the day, and may you and your staff enjoy the rest of the year.